Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2228. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Now, I would normally be in Belgium today, but I'm in Pennsylvania with a very special returning guest, and we'll explain why in just a minute. Serge Vanbockryck. Serge, welcome back to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
Absolutely, Mark. Let's go.
Yeah. Now, I typically ask people to share one thing that most people don't know about them, but I want to touch real briefly on why we're not in Belgium today, your native country. You're in Pennsylvania. You just had a meeting with a very special guy yesterday, right?
I did. I arrived yesterday in Newark and then drove down to Pennsylvania to Nazareth, where the one and only Mario Andretti lives. And he was very, very kind to sign the limited editions we're doing of the new 962 book. So I had an hour and a half with him. Wow. Talking about this and that. And he signed the tip-ins, as they're called, the pages with the autographs that go into the limited editions before they're bound. Great guy. I mean, one of my childhood heroes from going back to his F1 days in the 70s. And great to meet him in person. Yeah. There's not that many living legends around, but he's definitely one of them.
Well, what a treat. And we're going to be explaining this new 962 book. That's why Serge is here today. But you also are heading down to meet with a couple other famous people. One is a past guest, Hurley Haywood, right?
Indeed. I'm flying out to Jacksonville this evening, and then I'll meet Hurley tomorrow morning at the Brumos collection. Also for him to sign the pages that go into the limited editions. And then that same day, I drive down to Palm Beach and meet with Danny Sullivan the following morning. And then I fly home again, back to base and
back to celebrate some Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, you're on the Heroes Tour, which is pretty darn cool. And I was chatting a little bit before we started with Serge that I was reminiscing. I was going back and watching a 1990 video of the Del Mar Grand Prix, which I attended. I was living in Del Mar at the time. And my listeners have heard this. My wife has never really been into cars, but I talked her into going to that race. And she fell in love with racing. Being there, it was so much better than TV. She goes, TV's boring. You just see this thing go by. But being there and seeing all the people. So this is a place we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about your book. So let me give you a proper introduction, and we're going to dive into your world. But it was fun to reminisce. And I have a feeling that were you at that 1990 race in Del Mar?
No, I wasn't. I haven't done that many IMSA races. I did Sebring a couple of times and the Miami Grand Prix in the early 90s, which was basically at the end of the first IMSA GTP days, because obviously they're coming back next year, and also more or less at the end of the natural life of the Porsche 962 and their competitors at Nissan and Toyota.
Cool. Well, let me give you a proper introduction. Serge Vanbockryck started his career in the late 1980s as a journalist and photographer, reporting on endurance racing for European newspapers and magazines. And then in the mid-1990s, he left journalism for public relations and marketing, working in Formula One, the World Rally Championship, and at the Le Mans with brands including Marlboro, Lucky Strike, Toyota. He's been European PR coordinator for GM's Cadillac, LPM, Corvette GT, and the Chevrolet WTCC programs. He is a regular contributor to British Monthly Magazine, Race Car Engineering, and German Monthly Sport Auto, and he is the co-author of the official Porsche Rennsport reunion programs. We've got one of those coming up in 2023, I believe. I can't wait for that. And today he's here to share a new book titled Works Porsche 962, The Definitive History. It's a huge 3-volume set with over 1,400 pages, 1,800 images, some special editions that we'll learn about. So I'm very excited to have him here today. But first, a word from our sponsors. So we'll take a quick pit stop. We'll fill up the tanks and we'll be right back. So buckle up. Do you live where the climate is a great challenge? I do. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, it rains a lot during the winter and even into the spring. And that's why I love Covercraft's newest 5-layer all-climate cover. It was specially developed and engineered for anything that Mother Nature can throw your way. It's soft, it's breathable, and easy to store, and it pampers your paint plus your interior surfaces from maximum UV, rain, dust, and snow protection. Add their gust guards if you live in a windy area for extra protection to keep your cover secure. Your 5-layer all-climate cover is custom tailored with Covercraft's specific attention to detail, form, and fit. The quality and attention has been their standard since 1965. Covercraft protects cars, trucks, motorcycles, RVs, trailers, and your watercraft too. Every one of my vehicles is protected by a Covercraft cover, whether stored indoor or out. And I've got a deal for you. If you use the code YEAH21 at covercraft.com, they'll give you 10% off your Covercraft order. That's right, 10% off. Just use the code YEAH21 at checkout. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. I was tired of my rates for my collector car insurance going up every year for no explainable reason. My carrier seemed to be turning into a media company versus an insurance company, and I realized that a portion of my policy premium was paying for all those so-called free media goodies. So I did my homework, I talked to knowledgeable collectors, shopped around, and discovered American Collectors Insurance. They've been serving the collector car hobby since 1976. You last that long by properly serving your customers' insurance need, not with a lot of fluff. ACI is ranked the #1 online collector car insurance provider according to Google, Trustpilot, Facebook, and they offer their real person guarantee live support. No never-ending phone loops when you need help. Plus, because you don't use your classic car as a daily driver, you could save up to 40% compared to regular auto insurance. American Collectors Insurance provides agreed value policies. So if you experience a total loss to your collector vehicle or it's stolen, you'll be paid the amount listed on your declaration page, less any deductibles, of course. No ifs, ands, or buts. Give them a call today and ask for your free quote at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. Tell them you're a friend of mine, Mark Greens at Cars Yeah. American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. You've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine here on Cars Yeah for a couple of years now. Well, they're growing. And in 2023, they're going to grow from 4 issues a year to 6. And there's an opportunity here for you to take advantage of this growth. If you go to linkagemag.com and click on the Renew button, if you already subscribed, you can get a great deal. Use the code RENEW6 for 1 year, and you'll get 6 issues for the price of 4, or type in Renew 12 for 2 years, where you also have a great savings. Plus, they'll even throw in a free Linkage hat. How cool is that? The publisher of Linkage is Donald Osborne. He's been a guest multiple times here on Cars Yeah. He's become a good friend of mine, and I'll tell you, Linkage Magazine is one of those newer magazines that you're going to want to get. It's all about experiences, opinions, and values. It's a wonderful publication, something I look forward to getting. And now that I'm going to be getting 6 a year, even more special. So go to linkagemag.com. Again, use the code RENEW6 or RENEW12 to get that special deal. Do it before December 31st, 2022, so that in 2023, you'll get 6 issues of Linkage Magazine instead of 4. We are back. So in the 80s, you were a journalist in Group C, and I want to dive a little deeper into the corner during that time, and then we'll walk through this new book of yours because, oh my gosh, talk about the definitive history. And of course, it's published by our friends at Porter Press, who do some amazing books. They did your last book when you were here to share on the 956. So if you listeners didn't get to hear that, you can go back and find Serge's show on the Cars Yeah show notes page on the website. But let's kind of go back in time a little bit in your history there, and then we'll walk through this book.
Well, I started out in journalism during the so-called Group C era, which ran in the World Championship from 82 till about 91, 92. And it was one of the, I think, probably the best and most spectacular era in sports car racing, not only the World Championship, mainly based in Europe, but also over here in the IMSA GTP days. And the reason for that was that all the manufacturers, all the important manufacturers were there. Not only Porsche, but you also had Ford and Jaguar, Nissan, Toyota, Mazda, Mercedes. They all came at some point and had fabulous factory teams running their programs. But the one thing that Porsche did, and which none of the others really did, is they also made a whole batch of privateer cars. So on every grid, which averaged like 30, 35 cars on a regular race and up to 60 in Le Mans, half of them were Porsches, 962 or 956s in the early years. And they all had great drivers. They all had fabulous looking liveries with great household name sponsors. You had the Blaupunkt cars, the Rothmans cars, you had the Shell Dunlop cars, you had the Jägermeister, the bright orange cars. And they just looked to me a lot more elegant back then than they do now. Aerodynamically, they were not as evolved as they are today, mainly because the technical regulations didn't allow the cars to be. So they looked beautiful, basically. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
And Porsche, of course, was the most successful car at the time, and because there were so many, that was a car that sparked my interest in doing something with that a couple of years down the road, or a couple of decades probably.
Well, yeah, it's been a little while. Time flies by. Well, the 962, that thing obliterated its competition mostly. I mean, you think about that time period on both sides of the Atlantic. And you mentioned people being, all these different Porsches being able to be driven by different people. And we mentioned some at the beginning, but I want to kind of have you run through some of these folks because Ickx, Bell, Moss, Stuck, Al Holbert, Hurley Haywood, many others. I mean, the superstars, when we think back of racing, all drove these things, and specifically the Porsches.
Exactly. I mean, everybody who was somebody in motorsports in those days at some point drove a 956 or a 962. And quite a few of them made their careers with that car. Derek Bell happily admits that without the 962, he would not have gone where he went. With his career, because he'd done some races for Porsche. There was really nothing new for him in the pipeline. He did Le Mans in 1980 with a small front-engined 924, I think it was. Then a call came from Porsche, would you like to do Le Mans again in the 936 prototype with Jackie Ickx? They did, they won, but that was the only race on the schedule then. And then Group C happened. And Ickx and Bell won every race. They won the championship. They won Le Mans a number of times. And then even in the later days when Ickx retired, Bell was teamed up with Al Holbert and Hans Stuck. They won Le Mans again a couple of times. They won plenty of races over here in the US in Al Holbert's Löwenbräu car. So he made his name basically with the 962. And quite a few other drivers, like many F1 drivers, wanted to try that car because it was so great and it had ground effects, which was new at the time. From the aerodynamic evolution was with ground effects at the time. Started in Formula One with Lotus, and then carried over into sports cars. And you have a number of F1 world champions who drove that car at least one or the other race just because they wanted to drive it.
Let's talk a little bit about Porsche again, going back to the Weissach-based team. It was run by Peter Falk and Norbert Singer. And I like to ask my guests about what I call our driving inspirations, people that inspired you. When you think about this specific car and the reasons why you put this book together, and it's so in-depth. And I talked to Philip Porter about it, and he said, I don't think there's any other book that goes this deep into this whole series and this car specifically. What was the inspiration behind you putting a piece like this together? And my goodness, how long did this take?
Well, I think it started as a hobby or an interesting project, and then slowly evolved into an incurable illness, I guess. Now, the reason is why I started is because in the mid-'80s, the 956 had come to an end because of the situation with the pedal sitting in front of the front wheel axle center line. So it was then replaced by the 962. At the end of '87, or after Le Mans '87, the Works team pulled out of the World Championship to concentrate on the new IndyCar program and later on to F1. And it was basically left to the privateers to fight Porsche's corner. And then quite a few books were published at the time. And they all stopped more or less after Le Mans '87 or at the end of the '87 season. But the cars, of course, kept on racing for another 3, 4, 5 years, and even until Le Mans 1994, when they won Le Mans again, dressed up as a GT car, the Dauer 962 Le Mans Porsche. But there were never any follow-up books to the previous ones that were published. And I thought, well, maybe I should do my own book. And I thought, stupidly, that it would take me like 2 or 3 years maybe to finish it, do it as a sort of a home project or weekend project during my off time. And obviously these cars kept running, and then at some point they chopped the roof off and it became a Spider and won the Daytona 24 Hours again in '95. And they were still around, mostly as grid fillers at the end of '99. So that's like a 17-year career, which nowadays is absolutely impossible with any race car in any discipline, whether it's F1 or NASCAR or rally or touring cars. There's no way that a car can be designed and built and be successful for 17 years. And then obviously at some point I said, well, I'm not on a time schedule here. I don't have a publisher. Let's try to find as many details and information that I can find about these cars, because there was, over time, they had built 220 of them. The works cars as well as the privateer cars. And so I started gathering data and looking for information. And then at some point you find a list with engine numbers that go with specific chassis numbers, and which in turn go with specific gearbox numbers. So then I started to look a bit further. And at some point then I said, well, I just want to know everything there is to know and find everything that I can find. And that's why you have now 1,400 pages of just on the 19 Works 962s, rather than the 800 I was supposed to do, because I want to know everything, even the type of lubricants they used for the wheel bearings, or the gear ratios they had at this or that specific race or test, or compression ratios in the engine. It's all in there. I mean, it's probably only for the very happy few nerdy people like ourselves who really like to read that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to have it all.
Well, have it all, indeed. And you've enabled all of us to have it all in 3 versions of this book. And I kind of want to have you walk through, because we spoke at the beginning about how you're over in the States right now, getting some of the people to sign it. Some of these versions will have signatures in them. The drivers, there's a very special owner's set. So the lucky few people that have these vehicles. One of my good friends, and sadly we lost him a few years ago, Bruce Levin, who ran Bayside Racing, had 2 962s. I believe he had the first one and the last one. And I don't know who owns his cars now. They've sold off his collection of cars. Let's talk a little bit about the different options for listeners out there going, I got to get my hands on this.
Well, basically, there's 3 editions. You have the standard edition, if you like, which is called limited edition because it's limited to 962 copies. That's 3 volumes, 1,400 pages, 1,800 and a few pictures and images in a slipcase. Then the next one up is the collector's edition, which is limited to 25 copies, which comes with a leather cover and has as many drivers as that we could agree to sign the book, signed on the first page. I can give you a few names. Obviously, Mario Andretti, who signed yesterday, Hurley Haywood, who will do so tomorrow, and Danny Sullivan the day after. But we also have Derek Bell, Jochen Maas, Jürgen Barth, Yannick Dalmas, Henry Pescarolo, Max Welty, who was a team director of Porsche at the time, Roland Kusmo, who was the testing engineer, and I probably have forgotten a few. Klaus Ludwig is there, 3-time Le Mans winner, and Hans Stuck and a few others are still waiting in the wings to sign as well. So those are 25 copies of the collector's edition, and then one up from that is the owner's edition, which is limited to 19 copies because there were 19 Works 962s, 16 regular 962s, and then the 3 Dower cars that raced in Le Mans in 1994. Those are also again signed by all these drivers and key Porsche people. Comes with an Alcantara cover and in a slipcase, which has a conrod of a 962 engine worked into the slipcase and little metal plates saying in which engine this conrod sat and when it was used and raced. And these books are offered to the current owners first, and the ones that don't get sold because some people have multiple cars and might only buy one book will then be offered to the public.
Wow, amazing. Let's talk a little bit about what you learned about Peter and Norbert at Porsche and their efforts to put these things together. Because you think about it, you spoke about how many years this car ran. I mean, it's all unheard of today, obviously. It would never happen again. So this is a time in history. But Peter Falk and Norbert Singer are 2 big names in the Porsche world. Were there any unique things you learned about those guys in this program in specific?
What you learn in general, if you do some research on Porsche, is the way they go about their racing. Selling cars to customers is definitely in their DNA. Like you see with the 963s that will run in IMSA GTP next year and in WEC as well. They have the factory team run by Roger Penske, and they also have the privateer teams that can run a car as well. It's always been in their business model and to sell cars to privateers. So therefore, the cars were technically superior, but not exclusive. I mean, they were superiorly good. They were also easy to understand, and they were easy to drive for gentleman drivers, and they were easy to work on for mechanics who did not have access to all the tools and the knowledge that is within Porsche as a company. So, and I think Porsche were the only ones at the time that really excelled at that. They could build a car that was superior to all the others, but yet was easy easy to run, easy to drive. And that's something that is unique. And that's probably also unique to Norbert Zinger's way of designing and leading projects like the 962 and designing cars like that. It was technically superior, yet at the same time, it was easy. And it didn't need an annual evolution to still be successful. I mean, the cars were, obviously you had the wheelbase thing that turned the 956 into a 962. But apart from that, it was basically the same car for at least a dozen years. The engine was a bit bigger at the end. It was water cooled at the end, where it was mixed cooled at the beginning. Those are natural evolutions, but it never needed like a drastic overhaul to still be successful the following season. And that is absolutely the strength of Porsche and their race cars, whether it's 962s or tomorrow's 963.
I got to spend a little time around a couple of these cars. I had friends who owned them, and you mentioned simplicity, and I remember when you open those things up, from the outside, they're so eloquent. You said beautiful. They really were, so sleek. And then when you open them up, yeah, you look inside and they're quite simple. They almost are like a road car in a way.
Yeah.
The way they're put together. And I remember Bruce Levin saying, oh, these things are just like a street car. They're no big deal to work on. Well, Walter Gerber was one of his mechanics that worked on his cars at the time, who's actually worked on some of my past 911s. Solved a mystery problem I had on a 72S that I could not figure out what was wrong. And Walter jumped in it, and in 3 minutes of a drive, he said, throttle bodies. You need new throttle bodies. I'm like, oh, okay. But the cars were pretty simple. So that's kind of a unique thing when you think of race cars, and especially today, the complexity of race cars. So that's the joy of Porsche, right? They kind of keep it simple and tight.
Exactly. And that also has to do, I think, with the way the technical regulations were written at the time. Now you can probably have 10 pages on the exact position of the key to fire up the car. Whereas in those days, everything was a lot simpler. And I think if you make a good solid set of technical regulations, you get cars that are quick and solid and look beautiful and elegant and can be driven by and worked on by privateer teams as well as by the works teams. And again, Porsche understood that better than anybody.
For sure. You know, putting a book together that is of this magnitude, and you touched on this earlier, has got to have some massive challenges to it because it's so complex. If you think back to the production of this book, what was perhaps the biggest challenge you had putting this whole thing together?
Well, the biggest challenge was that, like the first 956 book, which was 800 pages, the second book was also going to be 800 pages. So the biggest challenge at some point was to convince the publisher, to put my hand up and say, well, excuse me, Philip, I've written 1,400 pages all of a sudden. Would you mind publishing?
How does he respond when you say something like that? Is there a silence on the end of the phone?
Yeah, there was a bit of silence and a deep swallow, but at the end, we all agreed that was the way forward. It's also a mathematical thing. Of the 956, there were only 11 cars, and they only raced for like 3 or 4 seasons with the works team. Whereas the 962, there was 19, and they raced for much longer. So you obviously have more cars, more races, more results, more drivers driving them. And then at some point, we also had the great opportunity to have 6 cars shot in a proper photo studio. There's an English collector, Henry Pearman, who has 7 in total, one 956 and then 6 Works 962s in his collection. And he allowed us to have his cars photographed in the studio. So that added a few more pages to the book as well. And it's basically in the way I started out 30 years ago when I started working on this book. I want to have everything as long as it's possible. And the same with this book. I wanted to have everything that could possibly be done to make this book stand out for all the others that have been published and will still be published, because obviously this year marks the 40th anniversary of Group C, which started in 1982. Next year is the 75th anniversary of Porsche as a car manufacturer, the 100th anniversary of Le Mans as a race, Le Mans 24 hours. So I'm sure there will be another couple of books on 962s and Porsches or Group C in general in the pipeline somewhere. So we really wanted to be the best and have it as complete as possible and have it as documented as possible. In the book, you also have the complete restoration process of 4 of these cars. From the moment they walk in, they are being pushed into the shop and completely taken apart, and everything is photographed, and all the parts before and after. That's something that's unique, and also takes a lot of commitment from the people working on these cars, restoring these cars, to religiously really photograph every part and everything they do, because at some point there's some Belgian who has this bright idea of doing the ultimate book. But it's all in there, and that's of course what makes a difference. So the biggest challenge, yes, was to convince the people putting the money in that we had to go from 800 to 1,400 pages, almost double the size. But I think at the end it's been worth it.
Well, of course. And I mentioned at the beginning over 1,800 images, photographs. How on earth do you find that many photos? My guess is you probably found a lot more, and the trouble was which ones to leave out.
Well, we did find a lot. I mean, I sourced pictures from 62 different photographers and agencies, and some people were just race fans who were at the race but just happened to shoot a certain picture that I really wanted to have in the book because it showed a conversation between people or something else, or a detail of a car that I couldn't find with the bigger agencies or even in the Porsche archives. Like, for instance, the unfortunate accident in Spa 1985 between Stefan Bellof and Jackie Hicks, where Bellof lost his life.
Yeah.
I found pictures taken by a British racing fan from the grandstand that shows the whole sequence of the accident. But the guy lives now in Amsterdam, I believe, and through a friend of an acquaintance of another friend, I was made aware that those pictures existed. So it took me like a couple of months of emailing people and trying to locate this guy, and he sent me the pictures, and they're in. And the same with many other photos that are not available or can be found with the big photographic agencies or in the Porsche archives.
You become a bit of a forensic scientist.
Yeah, exactly. I've described it in an earlier interview as automotive archaeology, and basically that's what it is. And the more you talk to people and the more they feel at ease with what you're doing and they understand what you're trying to do, they also send you documents and like invoices from cars being sold from one team to the other, stuff like that. And that makes for interesting things to look at and to read. I also was fortunate enough to have a few period journalists within my circle of friends, and they let me have all their period documents and notes they made at the races because they've kept them for 40 years. So a few of those I use as well as illustration to prove certain facts that were not known at the time and probably are not known until they read them in the book, about the way some people changed chassis numbers to make the hardware fit the paperwork, things like that. So that's why we end up with a lot of pictures. And obviously we have the photo shoots of 6 of these cars as well. Brilliant pictures, by the way, by great people of Gun Hill Studios in the UK. Did some amazing work there.
Fantastic. So what's next?
Well, the book initially started out as a total book on all 962s and all 956, so not only the works cars but also the privateer cars. And as I said earlier, there's some 220 built. So far I've covered 11 works 956s and 19 962s. That makes 30, for which I needed 2,200 pages total. So you can do the math on how many pages I would need to cover the 170 privateer cars that are still missing. But I'm happily slaving away on that as well, and I think 3, 4, 5 years from now that will be a third book or a third set of books on the privateer cars, but it still needs some work because I'm doing another book in between on the TWR Porsche that won Le Mans in 96 and 97, also for Porter Press, so that's like an in-between thingy, which is good because I can't possibly do 1,400 pages on that car because I only raced 5 times, 3 times at Le Mans, 1 twice. But that's another fun project in between. And then when that is done, I'll put my head on 962s again.
Wow, you're a busy guy. So I'm going to ask what could be maybe some impossible questions for you, but I'm going to give it a shot. I typically ask my guests to share a very special vehicle in their life. I'm going to have you pick one 962 or C car that really stands out for you. If I could park it in your garage, is there one that stands out?
Well, there's probably obviously it would be a works car because those are the ones that probably won most of the very important races. Uh-huh. But one that stands out because it looks very, very different from all the others is the Jim Busby car that won the Daytona 24 in 1989, which had the very special bodywork designed by Roman Slobodinsky, and which Bob Wallach, Derek Bell, and John Andretti raced the victory in '89. The one, the white and gold Miller High Life car.
Yeah.
I think you can't really call it beautiful because it isn't, but it's special. So, and special is beautiful by definition, I think.
I think that's right. Yeah, you're the wordsmith. You're the word master. I think you can say that. Well, again, listeners, this is a spectacular book titled Ultimate Works Porsche 962, The Definitive History. It's by Porter Press. I'll put links to their website where you can go and get yourself a copy. If you love cars and you have an extensive automotive library, this is one to add for sure. Now, here's another one of my questions I'm going to twist up for you. I'm going to enable you to go on what I call the ultimate drive. I'm going to put your seat into any of these cars. You can drive it on any track in the world. And if you'd like, you could be joined by maybe somebody from the past, even somebody who's no longer with us that you'd like to spend a little time with while you're enjoying this. So which car, which track, and who are you going to be with?
I would go for a 962, obviously, at Le Mans. Le Mans before they put in the chicanes on the Mulsanne Straight. And my co-drivers then would be probably Mario Andretti and Derek Bell.
Ah, nice.
Because they're absolute legends. Derek Bell in sports cars. Mario Andretti has won everything in anything he's ever driven.
Yeah.
But they're also very nice people. And I think in endurance racing especially, it's not only how good you are as a racing driver inside the car, but also how good you are and how nice you are as a person outside the car. I would take those two along. I'm sure Mario would agree.
I think so.
He'll still drive anything fast.
Yeah, he still likes to jump in cars for sure. So absolutely. Well, that would be quite a dream for sure. Before I let you go today, could you leave us maybe with some words of inspiration or thought that relate to this project of yours? It could be something about perseverance, because definitely putting something like this together is about perseverance. Something to leave us with today.
Yeah, I think so. If anybody is out there working on something special, whether it's a book or something else, just if you have it in your mind, you think you can pull it off, just go for it. And don't let other people think that or say like, oh, no, it's been taking so long. You'll never get this or that finished. Just go for it. Stick to your plan. I mean, I had guys walking up to me, friends, journalists, photographers, who at one point said, what about the book? Because it's like the monster of Loch Ness. We hear a lot about it. Nobody's ever seen it. Are you sure you'll be able to finish it in this lifetime, or will we have to read it through a Ouija board seance maybe? I said, no, I'm on it. You know, I'm in it for the long haul. And that's basically for whatever you want to do. That if it's really special to you, just go for it. Take your time. Don't cut corners. Don't skip on details. Just go for it. Keep your eye on the ball, and in the end, it will be done, and it will be done exactly the way you wanted to have it done.
Great metaphor for endurance racing, which so many of these cars ran, is, just go for it. Be persistent. Be bulldoggedness, I guess, is what you
exactly.
have. Is that the best way to describe you? Is there a way people can follow along with you? Do you have a website, or is there a place people can learn more about you?
No, not really. I mean, I'm virtually non-existent on the internet. But if people have any questions or want to know something, they can always write to Porter Press through their Porter Press website, and then the people there will forward it to me.
Well, I want to do a thank you shout out to, of course, Philip Porter at Porter Press and all my friends there. They bring some great guests to the show. And also Richard Prince, who reconnected us here. He was just a guest just last week on the show. So thank you, Richard. He seems to know everybody just like you do.
Well, we've been working together now for 23 years, I think, Richard and I.
Wow.
Because we both work for Corvette Racing. He does the photography and I do some words on the PR side, on the European side of the PR for Corvette Racing. So Richard and I go back to 99, I think. So we're old men.
Well, we all are, and thankfully we are, because the alternative to being old men is not being around. So it's good to be an old guy versus
exactly.
not being around. So that's what I always tell my friends who complain about getting old. Don't complain. It's something reserved for the privileged, for sure. Well, I really want to thank you for spending some time and coming back. You're on this busy press schedule right now, but safe travels back home. And until you and I talk again for the next book, I'll see you down the road.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. Thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how. At mark@carsyeah.com, or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. I've teamed up with AutoGeek because Well, they've been the leading source of auto detailing products, accessories for more than 20 years. Their Pinnacle Sovereign Paste Wax is specially formulated from Brazilian carnauba wax. It's easy to apply on any paint surface and provides that warm glow that we love, especially me on my vehicles. You're going to love it too. A favorite of car shows countrywide, Pinnacle Sovereign Paste Wax from AutoGeek wipes on easily, requires no drying time, is easy to remove, and provides up to 90 days of protection against damaging environmental contaminants. This wax is designed to exceed the standards of the most discriminating enthusiasts and collectors. Go to autogeek.net to get yours for the best product selection on the internet today, along with their very skilled technical support. Autogeek.net. That's where I go for all my detailing needs. That's autogeek.net. If you're listening to this program, there's a pretty good chance you believe what I believe, that the collector vehicles we love are more than just a means of getting from one place to the other. They're a part of our culture, our identity, and as a people, they bring us together at vintage races, classic car auctions, and 1,000-mile rallies. That's why I support the RPM Foundation, which exists to ensure that the critical skills necessary to preserve and restore these important vehicles aren't lost to time. RPM stands for Restoration, Preservation, and Mentorship, and their goal is to inspire the next generation of vehicle restoration professionals through its outreach programs. And they include Shop Hop, Off to the Races, the RPM Future Class, and many others. These programs engage talented young people across the country and connect them with mentors and a variety of opportunities in the industry. For more information on how the RPM Foundation is driving the future of collector vehicles skilled trade, visit rpm.foundation today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.